it was bad from the get-go because the table captain is bringing the box around and open it up, and there's a smell coming out of the box, and you couldn't quite pin what it was. It wasn't lighter fluid. It just had a really funky smell. And everybody got a whiff of it because you're kind of looking at the guy sitting next to you, and it's like, is that me? Or
welcome to the Pitmasters podcast. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about KCBS judging, and we have Travis Bates in the house, who is our residential KCBS judge and a good friend of ours. So stay tuned. We're going to learn all about what it looks like behind the scenes at a KCBS judging event, or judging room, I should say. So let's go.
Yo, what up, Rusty?
What's up, man?
Not a whole lot, just talking KCBS today.
That's right. We are talking KCBS today. We're going to talk some judging.
Yes.
So,
how was your week?
It was good, man. Did a brewery pairing with a brewery here in town called Shades Brewery. We had some people with the Wasatch Co-op, which I'm actually a part of, which is going to be a new co-op in town that is basically a year-round farmers market. So we went and cooked some barbecue there. We had paired up some beers that they wanted to try. They had some new ones come out, so really good stuff there. And we just cooked them up, and people mingled and tried barbecue and learned about beer pairings and learned about beers.
Nice. I was unproductive this week.
Yeah. There's still a chance to correct that.
Yeah, I'll try.
This is like Back to the Future.
Exactly.
All right.
There's some guy sitting to the left of me.
Who's that?
hey,
Who are you, guy?
it's Travis Bates.
So Travis is a KCBS judge here in Utah. I met Travis, my very first competition here up in where was that?
Was
Citrus.
Layton?
Is that Layton?
Citrus, yeah. It was in Layton.
How do you say it?
Layton.
Citrus.
Katrubis.
Wow, I've been there twice, never.
Volkswagen dealership.
So we had a competition. That's where I first met Travis, and he kind of comes around and hangs out, and we've become pretty good friends with him. So we brought him in to talk about judging KCBS, because he does that a lot, and we want to get his perspective on, we want to get a perspective on someone, other than the cook, and we want to see what it's actually like to go behind the scenes. So Travis, where did you get your start in becoming a KCBS judge?
So, I started this with Jesse Johnson from Great Western Barbecue. So I went to college with Jesse, met him through the radio station up at Weber State University a long time ago, and have just remained friends with him. And he was competing really heavy at the time, and it was one of those things where I got in with him, and he's like, "Hey, you're starting to pick up some barbecue habit, and this might be a fun opportunity for you. I want to put you through a judging class. We need more judges here. We've got a lot of KCBS contests coming up, as well as some private contests." And so I took the class up at Traeger's headquarters here in Salt Lake with about 50 other people. And it's just been a great experience. So it was one of those things that we pick up as many contests as we can every year to come judge. And it's fun. You get to do a little shigging while you're there, get to pick up some great recipes and some great ideas on how to do your own home barbecue too. So that's how I got started with it.
Nice. So what are the steps to becoming a KCBS judge?
So the first thing is you got to take a class. So they do put one on. One of the local reps will put it on. They put you through, basically go over the entire rule book page by page, which is pretty long. They do some food tasting. They actually do some presentations. They'll put some illegal meats in front of you. They'll throw some boxes out there that have bad garnish, things like that, just to kind of run you into some things you may see. And then they just really talk about what you should be looking for, because so much of it is just really subjective. I mean, when you tell somebody to judge taste, what does that mean, right? Everybody has different tastes. So basically, what they're teaching you on the taste piece is, what do you like? And, judge it on what the cook tried to present to you. So whether they went for spicy, did they hit spicy to a level you like? Whether they went for sweet, is it a level you like? Which is really hard for the cooks, because me personally, when you talk about the tasting, I love spicy food. But if they put something in the box that's too spicy, we'll get to, kind of the table set up later. There might be 3 or 4 judges at the table that just don't care for that. So, they cover that thing, that about the taste. They talk about appearance. One of the big things they talk about is, look, these teams are going to spend a lot of time putting garnish in the box. Don't even look at it. So they're trying to teach you to ignore the garnish and the stuff that's holding the meat in plate so that you're actually enjoying the meat and the appearance of the meat that way. And then they talk about tenderness piece too. One of the big things they cover is, it's kind of famous when you go to restaurants, they talk about things like fall off the bone ribs. That's not what we're looking at in KCBS, right? We want some pull. We want a little bit more texture to it. So they talk about basically tearing the meat apart and, how to really get the texture with your fingers, with your mouth, kind of what the texture, how the meats break up as you're sampling.
Are there any, what are the requirements to become a judge?
So the biggest one is probably age. You need to be 16 years of age or older. That's really it, other than you got to pay your membership dues. We pay membership dues to KCBS just like the teams do. And that's pretty much it. It's a good idea to take a refresher class every once in a while. So this next one that's coming up, I took mine about 3.5, 4 years ago. So I'll go through the class again, just because it's good to get those refresher classes.
So becoming a KCBS judge, you're taking the class, you're doing all that stuff, you're judging your first competition. So let's go through, let's just start here. Let's talk about, what does it look like when I'm a judge, I'm coming into a competition? What is the behind the scenes that the cooks aren't seeing? What's happening there?
Okay. So look, in Utah with the KCBS, most of the judges here, we know each other, which is good. You see a lot of the same people. You get to some of the bigger contests, there's going to be a lot of people there you don't know. The KCBS rep is there. They do the first thing when you walk in is you're going to see, depending on how many teams there are, you want to have one judge per team, basically, so that it keeps the number square so that they can do the judging better. So the tables are set up in sixes. You'll have 6 people at every table. They're usually set up around the edges of the table and on the one backside so that the opposite from the judges is completely open. That's going to be area where your table captain is working, and we'll talk about them. The seating program they use now is, it's not really random, but it's weighing out is how many contests you've judged, how long you've been a judge. It separates family members. They don't want family members sitting next to each other. And it really does give you a good random seating. So like I said, most of us know each other here, but it wants to make sure you're not sitting next to friends. We want to keep it as formal as possible. So that when we sit down, we're giving our 100% attention to what's going to be presented in front of us. So, we have a meeting about 30 minutes before first turn in. We stand, we swear and take the oath of being a judge, about being impartial, about taking it serious, to really uphold what the teams are doing and to give everybody a very fair shot at what they're doing. At that point, we've sat down. You're going to have your rep that's running and overseeing the entire contest. You're going to have a table captain for every table. They're the ones that are actually going to be bringing you your samples. And then you're going to have your table sitting there. We've also got volunteers there that are going to do some running, things like that. They run what's called the grazing table. So anything extra that you guys put in the box ends up on a grazing table for the volunteers and for the table captains who aren't actually sampling.
And let me tell you about the grazing table, guys. My very first competition I was going to go into judge. I'm a KCBS judge as well. So my very first one, I was delegated to judge running boxes and taping up the numbers and all that fun stuff. And I didn't get in a lot of food. So it's kind of a thing where our team is that we always put a little bit of extra on ours to feed those people. So when you're a cook out there, guys, think about those poor people who are running and not getting enough food. So put more than 6 in.
The full box is a good box.
Full box is a good box.
That's true. Well, and look, so personally, like because I'll do different roles, I'll volunteer or I'll table captain or I'll number switch. And, I love it when I open a box and there's 9 pieces of chicken in there, because then I know I'm getting a piece of chicken. Right. And that's my personal favorite is the chicken. So it's usually your first meat. So if you're judging, you're hungry. So the first meat that comes out is chicken. You're excited to see that big full box. And it is nice, and look, definitely not a requirement for the teams to do that. And it's a lot of extra work to fill those boxes, but it is nice for the volunteers, for the table captains, even the rep, getting sticky fingers over there, eating good barbecue.
So the cook just took the box to the table.
Oh no, let's rewind.
Nope, let's rewind.
Let's rewind. Let's talk about, you're sitting down. What are you seeing in front of you before any meat comes in there? What do you have in front of you? What are your tools for the game?
All right. So it's interesting when I started doing this, because my wife accused me of having, doing this for fun, which I do. But I want you to think about something for a second. You're judging 4 different meats. You're going to have 6 samples at least. Some cases you have 7, depending on how the tables are broken up. If you take 1 bite, that's 1 ounce, you're eating 24 ounces of meat in one setting. So it is fun. But by the time you're done, you're done with meat. So you're ready for the salad competition.
In a lot of restaurants, that is a free T-shirt and a free meal.
Yeah, that's true. They'll throw a hat in for the kids if you clean the bones. So sitting in front of you, you're going to have an official placemat. You're going to have a scorecard off to the side. There's going to be 6 boxes on it. You bring your meats in. They set it on a table. We don't see the turn-in table, so the judges don't see who turned in what boxes. At that point, they start switching numbers. It's a double-blind system.
And they have them originally written on the box.
Yes. Yeah, they have them written on the box, and then we tape over it with another number so that you have no idea what your number is when it goes to the judging table, and we have no idea what your number was when it got turned in. At that point, they break them in the runners. One of the conversations we have with them is you need to be very careful, because when they're putting the meat in the box, you guys spend a lot of time on presentation. And the last thing you want is somebody juggling those boxes around. You don't stack the boxes. You don't want the lids of the boxes touching the meat. So they come out on, it looks like a bread tray. After the numbers are switched, they bring them. The judges are numbered 1 through 6 at your table. And your table captain, the first thing they do is talk about presentation. So they'll have all 6 boxes on the table on the edge, and they'll open them one at a time and present it to each judge for appearance. And they wait for you to look at the box, judge the appearance, nod, move to the next judge. And then they go through all 6 boxes that way. Then they go back and everybody takes 1 sample out of the box. And this is where the hardest rule of judging comes into play. You cannot lick your fingers. So, and it is tough. I mean, when you think about when you're eating at home, that's a habit we're all into. But, as they're bringing samples around, you'll see everybody will have a water bottle in front of them. They'll have wet napkins in front of them. No soda, no beer, nothing else, just water. And honestly, we want room temperature water. So it doesn't mess up your palate. And as they're passing samples, I wear an apron when I judge because I'm getting stuff on my fingers, so I'm wiping my hands off between samples. Because if I'm pulling a piece of chicken out of box 1, it may have a completely different flavor profile and sauce profile than box 2. I don't want to contaminate that with my fingers, so I'm cleaning fingers in between every single pulling of every sample out of every box. No forks are allowed other than with pork, because sometimes when you guys bring pork boxes in, we're going to need a fork to pull it out of the box, but you cannot sample with a fork. Everything's done with your fingers. No gloves, just raw fingers on meat.
Nice. And then, so scoring, what is this? How do we score? What's the range window?
So, there's a lot of conversation on this. And if you read through certain social media pages, judges will talk about, how they're scoring super high or super low based on things. Personally, and look, I got to tell you right now, I'm speaking for me. Every judge is different. We all have our own opinions. You start at a 9. You start at a perfect score, and you earn your way out of that. I'm not comparing box 1 to box 2 to box 3. Box 1 is all on its own, and that's what I'm comparing box 1 to. So when I'm looking at appearance, at the first score that we look at down the first column, I'm looking for things like symmetry. I'm looking for even color. When you talk about chicken being the first meat, I know it's hard to get very similar size pieces of chicken, and I'm not looking for exact perfect pieces, but I don't want little tiny thighs and great big thighs. I want something, because you do it. And, I've heard Rusty say this before too. You eat with your eyes, and you do when you're looking at that appearance piece, I'm looking for the trimming on the end. I'm looking for things that, if it is skin on, is the skin even? I look at seasoning. So if one of them's peppered a little heavy or there's a heavy seasoning on it, that's not going to score as well as if everything is even. the scoring is pretty personal. You'll see people with clipboards. I keep my score sheet covered so that my neighbor isn't looking over at my score sheet and second guessing what they're scoring. Everybody should be scored based on the judge's merits. They shouldn't be looking over the shoulder. So,
and that's like a human thing too, because even I will see something and go, "Oh crap! I gave that guy an 8. They gave him a 9," and you kind of it gets in your head.
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell you I don't look. Like if somebody's got a score sheet out, I'm peeking because I want to know where I'm at. And we can also look through the judges portal after a competition and see where we scored against the table. And it's interesting. I look at my trends in there. What I usually score higher. I usually score, and chicken's my favorite. My chicken scores are usually a little bit higher than the rest of the table. My brisket scores are usually a little lower than the rest of the table. And that's something that I'm trying to work through too, to make sure that I'm giving everybody a fair shake, not based on my favorite meats.
Nice. So before we get into the meats, I had a question. So you brought it up. You eat with your eyes.
Yes.
KCBS appearance score is 0.600.
It's correct.
Do you think that's a little low?
Yes, I do. I personally do. But when you weigh that out as well, I get that score's a little bit low, but I've had some stuff come in that looked like, well, it didn't look great. But when you start doing taste and texture, it's amazing. It's cooked perfectly. It just didn't look great. Every cow's different. Every pig's different. I've seen what you guys do to a poor 18-pound brisket to get it down to, 9 pounds to cook, which is just shameful. But I get it. I get what you're going for. And, the taste and the texture are most important. But it does. The appearance lends to that.
Because as a competition chef, we are trimming for the appearance score. We spend hours scraping chicken skins. We spend hours laying parsley in there. And it just seems like that the appearance score should be a little bit higher just because of the time and effort that everything evolves into it. I understand that there has to be a weight imbalance and stuff like that, but I feel like appearance should be a little bit higher.
Well, I want to touch on that kind of what Travis brought before, is you eat with your eyes. So I don't really care too much about it because I'm convinced as I've done both. If I'm looking down at a really good piece of meat, I gotta say, man, there's something in the back of your brain that says this one tastes better, So I think it lends to the taste. Yeah, a little bit.
That's true. But what about the guy who has a putting green, parsley versus the guy who just threw it in there like darts and it's kind of just looks like it's naturally growing out of the box,
Well, and look at the KCBS contest level. Huge shout outs to you guys for so much wasted time in boxes, but they all come in perfect. In the day before a competition, the night before, we'll go out and talk to the teams and stuff like that. And, we talk about setting up your boxes, and everybody's got somebody on their team that sets up the box. I mean, whether it's somebody's wife, whether it's their kids, whether it's somebody on the team that's just really good at it, you really don't see imperfect boxes come in. So, they all look fantastic when they come in. So, I think that's a pretty level playing field there. I think it's more the presentation of the actual meats that come in that, there's probably pieces you look for. Like, so if they're passing box number 3 around and, the thighs look good or the pork looks great or the ribs, you're looking forward to testing that piece and really tasting it. So I think it sets up some expectations.
Do you think, my philosophy is that if I can make that greenery look as intense in the box as possible, I want it full. I want that to help my box look full. I've also seen people who will cut up romaine lettuce and make it really tiny, really tiny ringlets and stuff it all in. And it's maybe a centimeter off of the box. And, it doesn't look full at all. It looks pretty. Do you feel like when you're judging, do you even notice that? I mean, is it something that factors into you when you're judging and you look at something that is maybe anemic, or versus full, or do you think it doesn't matter to you?
To me, it really doesn't matter. And I look at the garnish honestly as something I can use in between samples to cleanse my palate. And I also look at it as something that's holding that meat in place. If you look at backyard competitions where they don't use garnish and they're turning in ribs, man, they're all over the box, right? Nothing holds them in place. So the garnish in my head is kind of just the glue to hold it in that styrofoam.
You're technically not even supposed to look at it.
Yeah, you can't help it. No.
Yeah, you can't help it. It's there.
Yeah,
You're looking.
Well, the green makes whatever you put in there pop.
Yeah, but
It makes it stand out.
there's things in our head we don't even know what's happening, you know, and just we're
Yeah,
acting.
exactly. Okay, so we covered all this. Which, since I touched on the appearance score, taste comes in at, what is it, 2.272?
I think something that you should be noted too. You're not allowed to talk.
No, you are not allowed to
Not
talk.
while you're sampling. After everything's done, you can talk.
In between categories, you can talk, correct?
in between
Okay.
You
categories.
can't even go.
Yeah, no noises.
No noises.
They don't want head nods, shakes. They don't want, anybody giving the okay sign. You're just sitting there quiet and respectful.
And that goes back to the thing. If I see your 9 opposed to my 8, I start questioning myself. I'm like, ugh, and the guy's all, like, what am I? Oh, what's my problem? So
Yeah, so the weighted system, taste is our highest at a 2.2972, and then tenderness comes in at a 1.1428.
Well, and it
So
should be, right?
It's weighted. Yeah,
taste should be your highest.
Taste should be your highest, and
That's what
tenderness
brings
as
you
well.
back.
Yes, and tenderness is key, right? We talked about it. You don't want fall off the bone ribs, right?
Correct.
So that's where the tenderness points come into play.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I think we kind of covered pregame. So
Sure.
let's get into it. We're gonna go into chicken. What are we looking for?
All right. Chicken box comes out. First sample comes around. Again, you're looking for what cut of chicken they put in there first, right? And you're judging it based off what it is. So if it's thighs, which most people turn in, I'm looking for symmetry. I'm looking for good trimming. I'm not looking for perfect pieces. There's a horrible, I'm not sure if it's a rumor or not, but that at a KCBS contest at one time a few years ago, somebody had actually rated a box down because it was too perfect. I don't know how you do that. And rumor has it they don't let that guy judge anymore, which is good. Yeah, I'm like, oh God, how do you sleep at night? But no, I'm looking for symmetry. I'm looking for color. I'm looking for even seasoning, stuff like that. And, I don't want to see a thigh bone hanging out of one side where they missed trimming. You're looking for objects in a box, right? And I've been in a contest where somebody left a toothpick in. So, judges, hint, hint, nod, nod. If you're using toothpicks, count them. So make sure everything that went into the chicken comes out of the chicken before it goes in the box.
And that's a disqualification.
Yeah, that's a DQ right there. You're done. So that takes that score way down. So I get my 6 pieces of chicken, 1 out of each box. And then at that point, you're taking a sample, right? You're taking a sample bite out of each piece. And it takes a few minutes. You take 1 bite. I'm really thinking about it. I'm pushing that chicken against the roof of my mouth. I'm trying to feel the texture. I'm looking at the bone, seeing how quick it dries. I'm looking at, kind of the doneness on the inside of the chicken. Making sure it's just at that perfect temperature. Really kind of thinking about, the taste profile. Does it work? So if somebody went with a sweet and spicy, is it well balanced? If it's, a pepper sauce, is it even? And there's times when you'll take a bite out of a piece of chicken and you just hit a pocket of rub. Somebody was just running that shaker a little too fast, and that one side of your bite just came off like a salt lick. And it's too bad because it was just somebody going a little too fast while they were seasoning, but it all goes into taste, right? You want it even. So then you're writing down the score for that piece. They usually have saltine crackers there. Take a little bite of a saltine. You want to cleanse your palate, little drink of water. You don't want to fill up on crackers. It's not a cracker contest. So you're trying to use as little as you can so you can move to sample 2. So you just go through all 6 of your samples, rate them out. The table captain comes back around. Your CBJ number, your table and seat number, everything's on that card. So
What's
they know exactly
CBJ?
what it is. CBJ, Certified Barbecue Judge. So they want, so you've got your CBJ, so they can track down who scored what. Table captain is looking at the scorecards. And if they see, so if the 3 of us are judging and I've scored everything straight 9s all the way across, this is a great piece of chicken. It looked fantastic. The taste was there. The texture was there. And Anthony scores them at a 6, a little further down. They're going to talk to the rep, and the rep will actually come over after all the judging of chickens is done, and we'll have a little conversation like, hey, what happened? What did you see that was so different than everybody else's at your table? So the table captains will come back around and just say, hey, we were pretty even on that. And there's going to be, 989s, 998s, 899s, 888s. But they want to see, when I look at that and when I look at the scoring on the portal later, I want to make sure I was really tight with everybody else at the table. I want to make sure that we're all judging on kind of the same merits.
Nice. So you said one little tidbit. You said looking for, excuse me, warm food. So it's worth for us to go out there and be burning our fingertips off, dipping in that hottest sauce as possible, so it gets warm to you. Or does it get? Is it still hot when it gets to you?
Well, when I'm talking temperature, I want to make sure that it's not pink.
Okay.
So yeah, no, the food's warm when it gets to us. It's definitely not hot. It's probably not what you're putting on your kitchen table at home, but we expect that. I mean, there's time, and depending on the contest setup, so when you look at the big one in Wendover, that's a haul. You got a long ways to get your boxes into the turn-in table, and then the turn-in table is a ways away from where the judging actually happens. And then by the time all the numbers are switched, it's a couple minutes, right? So the temperatures are going to drop in the box, and I don't think anybody's looking for hot food. We just want to make sure you're serving something at a correct temperature that first you're not going to get us sick. Which look, in 3 years of doing this, I've only seen 2 pieces of undercooked chicken. So, which is good. Thank goodness. So, thank you for using those meat probes. So,
how long do you think it takes competition? Let's say, let's just run through how long you think the food sits in a box in a competition like Wendover, that when you had 37 teams there. How long do you think it's sitting there from the time you put that on the table to the time it gets to a judge?
As soon as there's 6 turned in, it's on a table. They switch the numbers as they come in, and as soon as they've got 6, enough to go to a table, it goes to a table. So they don't wait for all tables to be served at the exact same time, which is good. That way, they're as fresh as they possibly can be.
So not very long.
No,
okay.
Not very long. So like Wendover, yeah, depending, I'll bet you from the time you've got it on a turn-in table until it's sitting, until a judge is taking a bite out of your chicken, maybe 10 minutes tops.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
No.
Okay, so where are we going from here? So
chicken, right?
Yeah, we started with chicken.
Yeah, so
chicken was good. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tried 9s.
I tried
all the way across.
I tried a new injection this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and look, the other thing about it, look, I really respect teams that go out on a ledge, and I still judge it on taste and tenderness and the appearance, but I like opening a box and once in a while seeing drumsticks. And, I like seeing wings in there, man. Wings are risky, right? I just screwed up a batch of those at my house last Saturday. So I know how tough those are.
I know someone who turned in wings at a competition.
I did it.
Yeah.
That's the guy I know.
Yeah. And they would have done really well, except for I roasted you guys a little bit on the heat.
Oh
well, but oh well, we'll live.
Yeah,
but,
if I would have tasted it, I would have loved it personally.
So for being a judge, obviously most of the time you get the thigh. Then every once in a while you'll get the seldom drumstick.
Yeah.
Really rare wings. Where does that breast fall in?
I've never seen anybody turn in breast meat.
Well, I know what I'm doing
3 years.
next year.
That's so 1990s though.
Yeah.
That's so 90s.
Yeah, it is, but you never know. It's just one of those things. I eat if you see breasts.
If you ever throw in nuggets though, I'm telling you.
You can't judge it.
Yeah, those will.
Nuggets. That's my downfall. Popeye's chicken if everything else fails.
It's coming back eventually.
Let's go through the actual one thing I think we really touched on is what is 2. I mean, what is it we're judging on? We're judging 2 through 9.
Yeah.
Right. So what's a 2?
So a 2 is inedible. It really is. There's something really wrong with that. So it came in extremely undercooked. Or extremely overcooked. It's inedible at a 2. I think personally, the lowest I've ever scored a piece of chicken was about a 6. And in my head, 6 is something that I can get at a really good restaurant. So if you turn in something that, and we're not talking, the Colonel or anything like that, but like a really good high-end restaurant that's serving chicken, in my head, that's a 6 or a 7.
You hear that, Jared? That's still good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
We got a 6 on our briskets, our first 6 ever, and Jared's just tearing himself up over it.
Luckily it's dropped.
I know.
Yeah.
So then what's a 3?
Well, and I'll tell you right now too, I don't think 3 really exists. I don't,
never seen it.
No. In the KCBS, you're either a 6 through 9 or you're a 2, and the other piece with that too is something that I really like is when the table captains or the rep encourage the use of comment cards. So if I'm going to give you something less than a 7, 8, or a 9, I'm going to tell you why. And it's not going to be, I didn't like it, or, something tasted funny. I'm going to try and give you as much information as I can about that. And the reason being is, look, Utah is a pretty small place, and we know most of the teams, and most of the teams know us. And this is fun. I mean, it should be fun for the teams. It should be fun for the judges. And we want to give you the feedback because, look, I want to turn in a scorecard of all 9s all the way across. I've seen that, I've seen the perfect score chicken table before, and it's awesome. I mean, it's really good because you're competing against yourself at that point, and it's really fun when everybody turns in just the best food that you've ever had. And, it really ruins it. I got to tell you, I don't eat barbecue in restaurants anymore. You just can't, right? I can barely eat the stuff I make. So, we get spoiled, eat really good barbecue from you guys. And, it's hard to do. So, yeah, I don't think the 2 through 5 really exists with people that do this a lot. 6 probably the lowest you'll ever see.
I'm a new judge.
Yes.
So I've been judging. I've only judged a few contests. I think it's 4. I've given a 5.
Oh boy, you're that guy.
Oh,
Well, hopefully the table captain asked you why.
Because they pulled me aside and they said, "What's up with the 5?" And I told them, "Well, everyone else gave him a 6, so I was 1 lower than everyone else."
Okay, so you weren't too crazy.
To me, it was inedible.
Yeah.
But when my judging class is inedible, means you can't swallow it.
Yeah.
So I was all but can't swallow it.
Wow.
So.
Well, see, and that's why I've probably never given that, because if you look at me, there's not much food I haven't been able to swallow. So
nice. All right. You feel good about chicken?
Chicken's good.
So 9 is amazing. 8's pretty decent. You did a really good job. Awesome.
8's still
you
great.
Didn't crush
Yeah.
it. 7, good job.
Yeah.
Valiant effort. 6, you just need to work on something. Just to tweak.
You missed something small.
Yeah.
Nice. All righty, let's move on to ribs.
All right, here comes your ribs. So same process. They come in, everybody serves them on the bone. That's the good news. You're always going to see the same kind of rib, right? The only real difference is they rotate the direction they show the meat and serve the meat. So if I'm spot 1, I get the very first piece of chicken out of that box. When ribs come around, I get the last piece out of that box. There's usually extra ribs, so that's usually the first one to hit the grazing table. So that always works out really well. One of the other things, and this is something I have seen happen before, is if teams are moving too fast, one of the rules is you don't break meat apart. So if I'm pulling a rib out of a box and it's hooked to the next rib, they both come out with me. And if the last guy at the table doesn't get a serving, you just got a 2, because there's nothing for that. You still get an appearance score, but they can't taste your food. And they can't tell you what the texture of it is.
So if you don't eat it, it's an automatic 2. If there's nothing left,
right?
I served you 5 ribs.
Yeah,
I'm your judge 6. You have to give me a 2.
Yeah, and look, sometimes ribs are usually pretty uniform, and most teams will put in 8 or 9 ribs in there. So there's always something to do. But I got a box in Wendover that I got an end cut, and my rib came out and it was tiny. And it was overcooked, it was on the end. And I really felt bad for the team, because I'm like, oh man, I don't know if you needed one more rack or who cut or what it was, but you shouldn't have put that one in the box, because that's the one I pulled out of the box. And the flavor was good. It was just the texture was horrible, right? And the appearance of the box was pretty good, other than uniform. It wasn't real uniform because you had small pieces and big pieces.
So do you like, what is it? The Showtime cut where they go every other bone and you see this big fat rib, or do you like just the traditional slice in between?
I like some meat on it. So, if they're cutting the meat evenly between the bones, on occasion you'll get one where you'll have to go back for 2 or 3 bites, because you can't get enough meat to really get the flavor, to really get the texture. So I think isn't it the Hollywood cut they call it?
The Hollywood cut.
Where you get the really
called,
big thick chunk on one side. I like that when I see it. It's pretty rare you see it, but I do like that. One of the only mistakes I really see is if people don't trim really well, and you'll get that tube of gristle, or that, I don't even know what it is, on the one end of the spares, that if they don't cut their ribs correctly, you'll get a bite of that. That impacts your score. That's going to impact the taste and the texture.
Well, I'm a huge fat fan, but man,
yeah,
not on
ribs.
big mouth of that. Yeah,
it's not good.
So, all right. So a couple of things with ribs. So, but I guess I want to know, like, what you're particularly looking for. Like, when you eat a piece of rib, what's something you're like, oh, this is a 9 right here?
Well, there's a certain flavor profile, and that Utah seems to be kind of a sweet with a little bit of heat. And I'm kind of over that as a judge. I mean, I still judge it fairly, and I judge it on what it is, but I like spicy food and I like different things. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but I'd kind of like to see an Asian rib turned in at some point, or just something really different that you can really judge it on. But you know, the hard part about this is, I mean, you have to cook the best average barbecue you can, right? And you don't want to be, you want to be the gray man. You don't want to be an outlier, and really take that chance. And that's too bad, because, you know, I think you're either going to be really rewarded for it, or you're going to get really punished for it. And there's so much time and money and trophies on the line that nobody wants to get punished for that.
That's hard. You think about, you want to be that maverick, because there was a guy that went from breasts to chicken legs to thighs, and I mean, he was probably like laughed out of the house. And then there was the first guy who put sugar on something, you know, in a barbecue competition, and there was the first guy that did blankety 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 blank. There was the first guy that did money muscle, you know, and all that stuff. I mean, there's a first for everything. It's hard, because you want to change it up, and you want to like say, okay, I want to be a little different, but at the same time, like you said, you got to be right in the middle of the road, and you don't want to offend anyone. And but at the same time, then your need, especially for me being, you know, a cook, and I want to push the envelope, it's hard, because you don't want to. Yeah. It's terrifying.
It is. And that's fair. I mean, that really is fair. And it's too bad, because, you know, I love to see different stuff in there, and I like to see teams take chances on it. And, you know, every box in ribs, every box pretty much looks the same. Every once in a while you get somebody that turns in more of a dry rub, less of a sauce on it. And the tendency I saw this year in all the competitions I did, whether they were backyard or KCBS, everything was kind of over-sauced. I mean, there was a lot of sauce on ribs coming in.
Right. So when it comes to presentation, it's you said they all pretty much look the same. Do you guys like the variance of, you know, like, let's run ribs angled over against each other, or is it just,
I don't care.
You don't care?
No.
What if they tip one sideways and you can see the smoke ring?
No.
I'm just wondering, because ribs is really hard to present.
And I got to tell you, that's one of the caveats that, you know, they teach you in judging class. You don't judge smoke ring. And that's in the instructions you get every time, because smoke ring can be done chemically. It can be done through wood. I mean, it can be done through different seasonings. So the smoke ring has really no effect on taste. And you don't look at it from an appearance standpoint. I mean, you're going to see it, of course, but yeah, I don't care how ribs are in the box. I mean, I want them all about the same size. I want them cooked evenly. I want them to look nice. I'm looking for how far the meat's pulled back off the bone, things like that on the appearance. So
going what you just touched on just for a sec to kind of just punch this in, every KCBS competition, there's a recording that they have there for new teams. So if you're a new team, or you know, you can go in and listen to this. I highly recommend it. I want to say it's like 20 minutes long, if I remember, 30 minutes long, something like that.
It feels like it, but it's only about 4.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. That one that all the judges listen to. Yeah, it feels like it's about 30 minutes long, but it's about 4.
There's a little so you can go listen to. It goes through kind of the basics of the rules. I would highly suggest that. Take them up on that. So that was just one.
I've got it memorized. Do you want me to?
All 30 minutes of it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm good, buddy.
Well, I'm looking at the KCBS regulations here. There's only 18 rules if you really break it down.
Yeah.
So there's only 18 things where you can really mess up on.
Yeah. Don't use the wrong garnish. Don't get anybody sick. Yeah. Turn in the right kind of meat. Right.
Is there something on appearance with ribs that kind of like
make sure you wear your t-shirt
or set you off? Oh, really?
Yeah.
No shoes, no shirt, no service.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a rule in here. Yeah, you have to wear a shirt. No smoking. Oh. You can't be like shirtless.
I think that's for our friends in the South.
Yeah.
Is there something on ribs that kind of like you look for and kind of turns you off? Like maybe someone didn't clean up the bones and there's all this blood gunked up on it or anything like that?
No, I mean, you're looking for pooling sauce, because that automatically, you know, that will disqualify you as well. On the appearance piece, but for me, I'm looking for even cuts, and you know that's pretty much all I'm looking for. It's just something really presented well.
What about color? Are you honed into like that color is the color I'm looking for, or is it nope?
No, because that's going to differentiate by sauce, by the rubs they use, things like that.
Most of the time, you hear people like, you want that perfect mahogany red.
Yeah. No, and look, that's still appealing. And sometimes you'll get a rib that's turned in that's got kind of an orange glaze to it, something different, and it's raising questions in your head, like, I wonder what's going to be under there, right? What turned it that color? So, but then you're judging it off its taste and its texture as well too. So,
all right, what's next?
I'm good on ribs. I guess we'll move on to my category, pork.
Pork,
and I like pork.
So do I. I really do.
you can play with you can play with pork.
Yeah.
Much more than any other category because you have a lot more options. Most people will turn in 3 pieces of meat. And Rusty and I have had this conversation. Is it better to turn in 1 or 3?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
this is going to be the Travis Bates opinion. Okay. So, and anybody else that's listening to this, that's judge certified, is going to have their own opinions on this. So I've eaten 12 ounces of meat now, right? Eaten probably 4 crackers, total. I've got a half a bottle of water in me. And if everything you turn in, so if you turn in a box that's got pulled, tubes, and money muscle, I'm taking from all 3 piles, right? So now I have to sample 3 different kinds of meat, and which isn't bad. I mean, because nobody turns in anything. I think the worst thing I've ever had was pork, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But, you know, if you put too much in there, because textures are going to be different between tubes and pulled and money muscle. Appearance is going to be different in the 3 and the things that you're looking for. You're really adding some complexity. One of the best boxes of pork I've ever had just money muscle in it, and that was it. And it was interesting because I overheard the conversation with the cook after the contest and everything, kind of figured out who, turned in that box. And he's like, yeah, I just totally screwed up my pork. So my pulled pork was mush. It was hot garbage. All I had was money muscle, and I threw it in there, and it was fantastic, right? Because that's my favorite piece in the pork box, just by what it is. But just turning in the 1 meat was fine, but 1 or 2 is fine. 3 is fine. I also look when they pull it in, how big of a pile of pork you put in there, right? And the pork boxes come in, they're usually pretty heavy. And I don't judge it down on appearance, but it's got to be hard. How do you measure how much you put in there? Because that's the one that's going to have a fork in the box when it comes around, and I'm going to take a fork full of whatever you put on there and a money muscle and a piece of the tube. But how much pulled pork do you put in a box? So if I see somebody put in 12 pounds of pulled pork, I'm kind of questioning why. So, why did they put in that much? I mean, it's great for the grazing table and all that kind of stuff, or if it's a really small portion. So portion control, that's one that I don't judge it any differently, but I'm always wondering about when I see it. It's like, because I'll get one box that's just heaping with pork, and then you get another one that's small. And I get why, based on how it's cooked, but that's one that always just raises questions in my head.
See, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like you have to be really, really confident in your cook if you're going to put more in there. For example, we put, we got in the idea where you have to put your money muscle in, and you have to put pulled in our first competition, and we did well, but I think you have to really be a little, just for me, just putting money muscle in and not complicating it makes it very, very easy. And you're not messing anything up. For as a judge, I remember taking a bite of money muscle going, oh man, that was so good.
Yeah.
And then grabbing some of that pull, and it was just chewy, and you're like, oh
yeah.
And you have to judge them both the same. You can't, they're not,
right.
they're it's its own entity.
Yes.
So it knocked the scores down a little bit. So I mean, something had to be super careful with, careful.
Right. So every judge is different, because you just got done saying you took that money muscle and then moved on to a pulled pork. And is that usually how it goes? It's I guess at this point, it's just rolling the dice on, are they going to taste your money muscle first? Or are they going to your pulled or your tubes?
Personally, I eat the money muscle last.
So you're savoring that.
Oh, because I know
that's going to be.
I know it's going to be awesome. That's usually something I really look forward to. And there's been a couple that have missed on that. They'll turn in something that's a little hockey puck and got a little overcooked, but it's still not horrible. But that's something that I look forward to. So that's usually the last thing I pull out of the box.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's something we're moving to, because to be completely honest, I'm not terribly comfortable with the rest. I mean, you always get some good pull, but man, I'm just going to put in money muscle. That's my new jam. So I've learned that, and that's what I'm going to do. And when I get more comfortable with different meats, I'm going to put some more stuff in. But
and there's more subjectivity. I mean, because pork, you can easily overcook pork, and when you figure on the texture score, I'm playing with it. I'm mushing it in my hands. I really want to see it, and I'm squishing against the roof of my mouth. I think there's a little bit more room for error in tubes and in money muscle than in pull. Because pull has a tendency to go from perfect to mushy in 2 degrees, right? So,
yep. And if you get both of those, perfect money muscle and mushy, then you're screwed. So
yeah. I really enjoy cooking pork, though. It's fun. Well, it's really like he said, it's that 2 degrees where you can make it fantastic or you can ruin it.
Yeah.
And I would argue it's probably the hardest to box too.
I don't think so.
I mean, for the new cook, because like you put in chicken, you're putting like 6 in, they're all uniform. Yeah. You put ribs in, you can put, let's just say you're putting 6 on top of each other.
Yeah.
You put in brisket, you're just layering it.
Well, in the presentation is important.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Yeah, I guess if you think about it, because you have this pile of meat, and how do you present it? Because I put it in there and kind of shaped it a little bit and made it look like a mini leap, and then actually ends up looking grosser and actually layering it in there.
Well, and that's the thing. I gave some feedback to one of the newer teams this year. He was asking me about one of his pork boxes, and you guys in your cell phones, man, after a contest, hey, did you see this box? I'm like, I don't know. I saw a lot of boxes and I ate a lot of food, but
I don't remember. I mean, I have no idea. Yeah. I've actually been to a contest judging it. It wasn't a KCBS, but I actually knew the cook and I had tasted his food before. I couldn't pick his from nothing.
No, they are all that close. And, but I gave some good feedback to one of the teams because, his box was just really discombobulated. So, I like that word. I don't know if I could spell it, but it came in and it was just kind of a hot mess. And that was the feedback I gave him. I'm like, look, and I tasted his pork after the contest. I'm like, yeah, I mean, the flavor's good. Everything's good. But, I'm looking at the picture of the box you turned in and it just doesn't look great. It looks like you threw it all in the box. And I mean, you still want it to look random. I mean, you don't want it to look like, when you go to the restaurant and you get like the side of rice or potatoes and it comes out and it looks just like the ice cream scoop that they used to put it in there. I mean, you want it to look random, but you want it to look uniformly random, right? So there's an art to that in how you put it in the box.
It's like messy hair, you know. You have to style it.
Well, and I was telling you, so that's the one piece of meat that I've had. I mean, I've seen some undercooked chicken, but the one piece of meat that I had that was just absolutely horrible was the very first contest I judged, what happened to be Wendover, which is, I mean, that's the pinnacle, right? That's a great contest. And for that to be your first one to get to judge, I mean, they're treating you like a king. You're in the concert hall. Everything's great. And somebody turned in a sliced pork. And I don't know what happened, but it was bad from the get-go because the table captain just bringing the box around and opened it up and there's a smell coming out of the box. And you couldn't quite pin what it was. It wasn't light or fluid. It just had a really funky smell. And everybody got a whiff of it because you're kind of looking at the guy sitting next to you and it's like, is that me? Or, and everybody caught that. And the flavor was off. It had kind of a funny color. It was almost like, I thought it was a test box. Like, are they just seeing, somebody screwing around with this and put like lunch meat in here? What is this? And obviously it did not score well. And then our post judging conversation at the table, we had a really interesting conversation about, oh my God, so where does smell go? Right? Is that a taste? Is that an appearance? Because you got a whiff of it the second the box was open, and it was kind of crazy. But that's probably the worst piece of meat I've ever had, and I've only had one. So
I think it was Anthony's.
No,
because I tasted his, and it was really lighter fluid.
He's got bologna in there.
That's weird because I don't even own lighter fluid.
He just shoots his gas.
Yeah,
that's how you start a fire.
Exactly. We good on pork?
I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Alrighty, we're moving on to the king of the meats, I guess. Brisket.
Everybody's favorite. My least. It really is. Whoa.
Yeah.
Tipping stuff over. That's why we can't have nice things.
Right.
That's exactly why.
So there's 3 ways that I know how to present brisket. Sliced, then you got your burn ends, and the rare chopped.
Never seen chopped. I haven't personally in 3+ years. Because that tells you something. If they're turning in chopped, you did something to your brisket if you can't get it in sliced, right?
I don't know. There's some really good chopped brisket out there.
No, I'm with you. But I don't know. If everybody else is turning in sliced, there's a reason why, when you're talking about the texture and the appearance piece of it, you're doing the bend test and pulling it apart. If it's coming in chopped, you're wondering if it's overcooked or, falling apart.
Right. But if you think about it, I've thought about this. So you get your sliced and they go through the bend test and everything like that. And brisket, as soon as you slice it, you have a 10-minute window before that sucker starts drying out anyways.
Yeah.
But if you chop and you can present it in a nice little pile, I think it's going to retain the moisture a little bit longer.
Oh, I'd be down. I'd love somebody to do it because I want to try it. Right. But I don't think you're going to see it unless you're going to be the guy.
I've seen it once on social media and the guy actually won the comp.
Wow.
There's a lot of discussion with brisket and even adding burnt ends. So I think once that conversation gets settled, then you can start seeing chop. But there's people adamant not even putting burnt ends in it,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and there's, rumor if you're on the on the Facebook, right, on the social media, and there's judges pages and KCBS and like all these people all over the world that are supposed experts and talking about rumors. And one of their big rumors is they were looking at pulling brisket out and substituting different meats in different contests. Or and look, it's kind of an unlevel playing field when you think about brisket, because there's so many different kinds of brisket. There's so many different levels of brisket, from choice all the way up to purple stars and all that neat stuff. That, like, if you're a newer team and you can't afford a $200 brisket, that's hard. It's really, I think it's a lot more of an unlevel playing field.
I agree with that, but I also disagree with that, because earlier this summer, I literally just came off my vacation. I had very little fun, so I just hit the Sam's Club because I wanted to cook.
Sure.
Got the choice brisket, had like a thumb size running of fat through it. That was it.
Yeah.
And I actually tied for first place on that.
And
cooking against Snake River Farms,
I think it's like with poker. You don't just walk in one day and beat the best guy.
Right,
It's a whole series that you have to win out. So you might win once, but you're not going to beat that guy with an 8-9 or Wagyu every time. In fact, he's gonna beat you, I would say, more often. But people do stumps. He's famous for using whatever he buys. He's like, I'll just cook on whatever I get. That was a good stumps impersonation.
But yeah, I
That
agree,
wasn't
because you it was a good stumps. Because the Wagyu brisket versus the A9s down in Florida, and it's completely different.
I wanted to know the difference myself, and brisket is hard to cook, and I go hot and fast at home because I'm just lazy, and I don't
on a drum by chance?
Not yet. So
hey, your neighbor sells them.
I know. My wife told me if I bring home another smoker, it better be big enough to sleep in. And I'm looking at some pretty big smokers, so I should be okay. But no, I went and bought. It wasn't Snake River's highest level, but it was whatever somebody brought in on a really good sale at one of the local grocers, and I took it home. And honestly, flavor wise and everything, I seasoned them both the same and cooked it. I put it up against one that I bought at one of the club stores. And the only difference I noticed was when I was trimming. There was a lot less stuff to cut off that Snake River Farms, right? And that was kind of cool. I prepped about an hour and had 5 or 6 beers set aside, ready to do it. And it ended up being like a 2-beer job. So, I didn't feel like I had to trim near as much off of it. But that was about the only difference I noticed. But I'm also not a pro.
With gold, I find the fat is just so much better. We just did a black in Montana, and it was a rough shot. We should have practiced. It takes a minute. You get a gold, you're burning hot and fast. It really depends on your cooker too, though.
Yeah.
If you're burning hot and fast, you want a fatty content. You want that gold. You want a lot of marbling in there, and not a lot of marbling is going to hurt you a lot more than if you go low and slow on a hot and fast cook. So
right.
I think there's a difference. I think it can be done. I'm not good enough yet, and so I'll let you know in a couple of years when I'm cooking on a Walmart brisket and when competitions. But right now, man, I'm a Wagyu guy moving on to A9.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. It all depends on your cooker too. If you go really low and slow, running at 225, and you plan on the 13-hour cook, maybe a Wagyu's not going because it's going to get chewy. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Good.
All right, so now we got our brisket box, right?
Yeah,
man, that was a lot of. We talked a lot about brisket there, but
yeah.
So box comes in.
I'm passionate about brisket.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and I tell you, man, it's my least favorite. It really is.
Well, it's because it's the last thing.
You're full. You're sick. You just want to go home.
You're just done. And
there's nothing worse than getting down to the barbecue contest. You're like, I'm never eating barbecue again. It's like having the worst hangover of your whole life.
I want like 2 spoons of ice cream and a cold shower and a pillow. And just cry myself to sleep and heal.
And my favorite blankie.
Yeah, I just need that in my life. But now, so box comes around, and the one that's really interesting to me is what everybody, it's the burned ends that are in there, right? Because they're not really burned ends. So I mean, the word burned is burned, and none of them that come in are. So they're the little soggy pieces of really good fatty point that's in there, and I love them. I really do. I wish we had the time and that the judging would support real burned ends. Because if you can find those at a restaurant, that's my favorite, right? If we go to a barbecue shop and they have real burned ends on the menu, I'll order that every time. But no, that's but then everybody is really turning in both meats now, right? They're turning in the burned end and they're turning in slices. But then you're running up against the same thing you are with pork. Textures are completely completely different in those two pieces of meat. You know, and you're trying to judge them subjectively. Okay, did the burned end have the right texture and taste for what it should be, and the slice? I got to tell you, the biggest challenge with brisket, it's like you said, once you slice it, I mean, it's on a stopwatch, right, to when it's just lunch meat.
You got 20 minutes max.
Yeah, and look, the preservatives that the teams are using, usually, well, not usually, sometimes that starts overpowering what you meant to do with your brisket. So, and they'll come in and you can see they've just been slathered with, you know, I mean, you can pick up the broth, you can pick up wine, you know, hints of wine, you can, you know, butter, whatever it is they're using to try and really preserve that moisture. And that's a really fine line of, you know, can I get it in front of the judge and still be moist without overpowering it with those flavors?
Right. And you bring up a good point with slathering different stuff on that. I've slowly seen a trend. Brisket's getting more and more saucy.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I don't care.
You don't care?
Look, I'm going to judge it on
Right.
what's turned in,
Right,
right?
but
if it's over sauced and it's overpowering, again, it's, you know, it's not a sauce contest. So, you know, and I still want to be able to taste the meat and anything that comes in, and ribs. And now, like you say, going into brisket are the two where you really kind of run into trouble where you can over sauce and overpower the meat flavor.
Yeah. And I think we did it on accident in Wendover. We got the worst brisket score ever. And, you know, we backed off the sauce. Cause I don't know. Brisket's the one thing you don't want to sauce. It's weird.
Yeah. And I think it gives it a different texture too. You know, feels like it's a little bit more slimier, and
yeah,
cause brisket's a really soft meat. It is. And then you add some sauce to it and it's just going to add this really soft bounce to it. I feel like.
I'm cooking. What am I looking for that you're going to look for in, how do I know that it's tender? What are you looking for when you're judging?
So when I pull it out of the box, I'm pulling it apart, right? You want a little bit of pull. You know, I'm not holding it up on my finger there, and there are judges that do that. They'll hold it up on their finger, and that's awesome. You know, to each their own. But you know, I'm pulling it apart. I want to see, you know, the slice that I got. You know, backing up a little bit when you're talking appearance, I'm also looking at how thick of a slab you put in there. You don't want anything too slim. You know, you don't want to turn in, what's that one-sided bacon they used to make? Remember that stuff you could almost see through? And sometimes
Pancetta?
No, like the really crappy stuff your parents bought when we were
little.
Bar
X.
Yeah,
that's the stuff you chop up.
Yeah, maybe bacon category would be good.
That'd be awesome.
Now that we're talking about something to substitute. But anyway, back to wow, boy, that was a good sidetrack there. But now I want some bacon. But now the slices, you know, in this last trip out in Wendover, somebody turned in brisket at the table that I was on it was almost half an inch thick. I mean, it was huge. And I thought, oh God, you know, what happened? You know, and it was fantastic. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty brazen move. And I mean, when the box came out, it was heavy because there was a ton of brisket in that box, and it tasted really good, but I'd never seen a slice that thick before. Pulled really well, you know, so I'm pulling it apart, I'm playing with it, and just kind of want to see uniform cuts. And, you know, it was interesting because it was something I'd really never even thought of. And I can't remember who asked the question or where they asked it, but they were talking about when they're trimming to go in the box. You know, if I trim my brisket after, I don't even notice that, right? I'm still looking for uniform pieces. You know, did it fit in the box, right? Obviously, you want it to fit in where you're putting it. But, you know, I'm not looking at side trimmings or any of that kind of stuff. I'm looking at the whole picture of what that box looks like. And then on the texture piece, yeah, texture, you know, we do see a little bit of overcooked brisket. You know, it's interesting when I've talked to the teams too, the guys that are going hot and fast, you know, there's a lot less margin of error there because they're cooking it so fast, where the guys that are cooking overnight and throwing in a cooler or, you know, a Cambro, you know, they got a little bit more play that they can do with their meats. So, yeah, it's, you know, and the taste, and the other thing that I'm looking for too, I'll be honest, when I open that box and if I can see, you know, where they've slathered it with, you know, broth or drippings or whatever it is they're trying to do as a preservative, because it starts to pool by the time it gets to us on the table. It starts to pocket up a little bit on the meat. It'll absorb into some of it, and then you'll see little pockets of it on there. It's not my favorite appearance.
So you'll see a pool and go,
yeah,
not a 9.
Yeah, probably an 8.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the burn end situation, we put burn ends in, and it was like, we have to put burn ends in. That's just what you did. You know, as a judge, I loved when I got burn ends. I was like, hell yeah. I got burnt ends. But I feel like we're going back to the pork situation, you know, where like if I'm getting a good ass burn in,
Yeah.
that flat better match that, or vice versa.
Yep.
And so we went away from it. We talked to enough cooks where they're just like, you know, I don't even mess with that. We just put in the flat. We just call it a day. And if our burn ends are unreal and the best we've ever had, we'll put them in. But that's it. So, I mean, do you ever get that? Do you feel like this? Do you feel like that's the same thing with pork? Kind of like, well, man, if they don't match.
Well, and I think it is becoming more of a no matter what situation, because I've seen boxes and I've tasted boxes where they just shouldn't have put the burn ends in there. They had to cut them so small because of what they had, or, they were just not undercooked, but just really gooey. And it's like, man, that just wasn't your best decision to put that in the box.
Well, a good example is we cooked one and thickness. Like, so if you're overcooked a brisket and it's just tearing itself apart the second you want to cook it, you want to cut it a 1/2 inch thick.
Yeah.
But don't put in your burn ends because there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
And then if you undercook your brisket, you want to cut it as thin as possible. And again, people are still throwing in their burn ends with that. And you have to understand, if your flat's like that, your burn ends are most likely the same way. So, I mean, if you have to put them in, do it. I'm in my life right now, and this could change. I'm no moss. So no moss on the burn ends.
So when it comes to burn ends, how I decide if I'm putting them in is I try them.
Yeah.
If I get any bounce off it, I'm not putting it in.
No, that's fair.
So,
I think that's a good decision.
And that's my pro tip to you is try your meat before you put it in the box. Rewinding back to pork, even, you're like, taste everything that you're gonna put in the box before you do. So sometimes you'll be like, whoa, my pork is way better than my money muscle. Leave the money muscle out.
Yeah.
Don't do it just because you think you have to.
You have to put the best meat in, period.
Exactly. Best meat.
And something I've learned you don't marry your meats, We thought you have to put in this, you have to put in that, you have to put in your burn ends, you don't. You can put in chopped brisket. You can do whatever you want to do. So don't get married to your meats and don't think you have to put something in. Just put the best meat in. And if it's not your money muscle, then put it in, put in your pull. And if it's not your flat hell, just fill the whole box with burn ends.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Have you ever gotten a full box of burnt ends?
I have. I've seen one box of nothing but burnt ends, and they were fantastic. I mean, they had nailed it. And I think that at that point they knew the flat's just not going in. So, they were perfect.
All right.
Well, good.
What's next?
That's it, man. We went through all 4 meets. We went through the breakdown of becoming a KCBS member. We went through some rules.
This is definitely a 2-parter.
Yes, definitely. We will hit this topic again. But if you're interested in becoming a KCBS judge, you go to kcbs.com and they will have a list of classes available in your area. If not, you might have to take a road trip.
Yeah. And rumor has it we're trying to get one put together for this fall, early winter.
So in the Utah area. So
I want to go back through it again too.
So surrounding even people like in Idaho and Colorado.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will have to travel, but I've also talked to KCBS judges too. After they get certified, they actually plan their family vacations around events so they can actually go and judge whether they're on family vacation.
I did one in southern Utah last year where there were judges there that had 500 contests in, and that's what they do. They get in the RV all summer and drive around, and then they go see their heart doctor in the fall and, go on a salad diet. But no, look, the one thing that I would really encourage all the teams to do is take the class, go through, and because it's a whole different world to see it from this side, just like every judge should go cook. Right. So, but even if you can't do it through a KCBS class or whatever, I know a couple of the pros came out to some backyard competitions this year, and there's still CBJs there that are always helping those out too, because they're fun to do too on the backyards. And man, I was watching those guys take notes like crazy, like, because it's a little more lax. You can talk a little bit more and you can compare notes a little bit, and you're kind of walking them through what you see and what the differences are between backyard and pro. And it was really fun. I like Trevor came and did it at Hooper Days, right? Well, don't say Hooper, they'll throw you out. But at one of the backyard, it's Hooper. But at the backyard, and it was great talking with him afterwards because he said, "Man, that was just completely eye opening," and it really is. I think it makes you a stronger team.
And if you're a judge and you're listening to this, do me a favor as a cook, just take that second to write on your little sheet.
Yes.
And do a comment card.
Yes.
And get into that habit, even if it's just to say salty, that helps.
Yeah.
Even if it's just that. When I went to Hooper days.
Mm-hmm.
You should have seen me, man. I was like, oh, right now I was writing. I think I had comment card on everything.
Yeah, we had to speed you up. It's like, come on, man.
Well, I'm taking care of my people.
Yeah, you get a 7 and you're like, why?
But
There was to know.
Yeah, just like you said, salty, spicy. Just one word will even help us just that little bit.
So as a pro, were you impressed with some of the boxes that came in the backyard?
This one I was.
Yeah, I mean,
I was terrified.
Yeah,
because I had been in the backyards and I have had neighbors that next to me, my friends come over. We like to put this tomato juice in here and fry it up real good. And they love it. I'm like, yeah, well, great. And I'm like tasting it, going, oh, I can't swallow it. And right in front of them.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought it was going to be, and it wasn't.
No, there's some amazing stuff turning.
That was good
with
stuff.
all the hint videos and everything you can watch, and then you can go to and watch all the teams cook. I mean, they were turning in, chicken they'd been trimming for 4 hours, just like the pros do. And I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, I didn't have a bad box, and I was convinced there'd be at least 2 where it would be.
Yeah, I did Cabela's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised on the stuff that was coming in. They did a really phenomenal job.
I felt kind of bad too. Well, because I helped kind of table captain to do some other stuff at that last backyard. So
I thank you for that, because you sacrificed your chair for myself.
That's what I was just going to say. I was really bummed out. I had to go have a corn dog afterwards. And the presentation wasn't there on the corn dog. Right. So
no, the texture was off too.
Oh God, it was painful.
There are thousands and thousands of questions we can ask. So we're definitely going to bring Travis back and talk a little bit more. Do a Facebook questionnaire. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Have a judge, get some cooks on there and ask live questions and do different stuff. Because I could literally do the whole entire podcast again with all the material we haven't even covered yet. So
definitely.
But we're going to thank Travis for coming all the way down here to talk with us. And we appreciate your time, man.
Hey, you're more than welcome. This is fun. And it's been helpful. And look, just to plug you guys and get some big heads. The podcast is great. And it's been fun for everybody. And even, I've been talking to a lot of the judges that are listening in and the teams and I've been forwarding this to a lot of my friends that just like to barbecue at home, and man, just some tips coming out of there, and having to pull over the car and actually write stuff down and then re-listen to it when I get in my office. So yeah, I mean, these guys are giving some good hints. So.
Yeah. Thank you. And we're pushing for more and more people to come on here so we can get a broad spectrum of how everybody else is doing it. Just like you said, it's kind of like taking a barbecue class. If you can pick up one tip from each episode, that's a win.
Yeah, for sure. That's we've done our job.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. You can catch us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
On YouTube, just so you guys know, if you're watching this, the chances of you seeing a better backdrop are 100%.
Yes. This is just all put together. We're just kind of winging it. We're new at this, but we'll bring it together.
But yeah, guys, check us out and tell your friends to subscribe. You subscribe. We really appreciate that. We're getting a lot of good responses, a lot of downloads, and we really do appreciate your support. So continue to do that and spread the word, guys. And until then, keep cooking.
Yep. And then next episode, I think we're going to be talking sauce and rubs. Can't guarantee who it is, but it's going to be where we're going to be.
It's a big wig. It's a surprise. It's going to be awesome.
So we're just locking that down. All righty, guys. Have a good one.